Sure. All right. So I was telling you all, I think all of you know Desiree Scherini. She by now is a longtime member of the DC Lodge. She's eminently qualified as a hypnotherapist, among other things. She is also an artist in various modes. She designs beautiful clothing as one of her many skills. She paints as well. She teaches in elementary schools, I think. And
adults now.
You don't now. That's okay.
No,
But
adults I teach now.
You used to.
A long time ago.
And she also has a diploma in theosophy from England. And she published a book that is titled Journey to Joy, the Written Path, that she lectured about, I remember, a couple of years ago. Anyway, thank you for all you do, Desiree, and the floor is yours. So we are looking forward to listening to you today.
Thank you very much. You make me sound good. Sure. Hi, everybody. So I have a PowerPoint for today, and let's see if I can do that without too many, issues. My presentation, I got to go back to share my screen. Hang on.
Yeah. And if you have a question, raise your hand or you can put it in the chat. Also, it's best to raise your hand using the reactions button. Beautiful, beautiful.
Now, I will ask, as I'm doing this, I'll start it from the beginning. Okay, and so you guys can all see that beautiful ocean, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And not a bunch of other weird stuff on here like I see. You know how the little pop-ups are always in front of things? Anyway, I had fun finding this video.
No, we're swimming. We're swimming.
Yeah, isn't that pretty? It just feels so good to just look at it. So that's my presentation. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Anyway, so my presentation is on water, living consciousness. It's about the consciousness of water, water as an empath. So water is about 70% of our bodies. It's also about 70% of the planet. And again, we would think of the, microcosm, macrocosm, that, so much of as I study, things just mirror each other and show that, what's it called, the correlation. Anyway, so we're very much like the planet as far as being made up of water. It's the first element, and all life comes from water. There's a lot of reference to water and the sun as the creators of life, water being like the womb, and the sun, the energy, the fire, so the water and the fire that came together to create life. It's also the most common substance on Earth, and it's in every living thing. And as a matter of fact, of course, air, land, sea, everywhere. And without water, there would be no life. So a few images of every day that we shower, we drink water, we flush our toilet, we brush our teeth, swim, go boating, go to the beach. Water's in every part of our life. So you just imagine you've probably been in a building when your water's been shut off, right? And it's that's when you realize how often you go to the sink or you can't, like yesterday they had to work on my water and I filled up half the tub. I was afraid I wouldn't have my water. I filled up cups to drink from. And when you don't have water, it's really apparent how much it's in every part of our life. And without water, they say that you probably can't survive more than 3 days. Of course, without food, you can go about a month. So just remembering that water is so much a part of our lives and so needed. Water has some unique qualities, which is what interests me. It's the only element, only substance that can exist in three states, as a liquid, a solid, and a gas. And further on in my talk, I added another slide where there's someone who's studying and has, and I just found it late last night, so I don't really add it, but someone is suggesting that it also has a fourth state, which would really, make it quite unique amongst everything. Now, water, besides being unique that it can exist in three different states and nothing else can, also is unique in its tensile strength. I'm just going to read through here. It's been subjected to measurements of over 150 years, and it plays an important part in all of nature. It affects the height of the trees. For example, it's determined by the fact that water can sustain the tensile strength and work its way up against gravity up through the, I think the word is xylem, I just kind of use tree veins, that it can climb so high up to the tops of the trees. It can also have this sort of a hydraulic power that plants use to push through, and enough force to split rocks and buckle sidewalks. And they do that because of the potential from water, that it has this surface strength and power. So famous people, and so many of you have probably heard of Dr. Emoto. Dr. Masaru Emoto was a Japanese scientist. Excuse me, I have to move my pictures out of my slide. A Japanese scientist whose work explored the concept that our thoughts and intentions impact the physical realm. And he's important to water because he used it before even becoming, studying water, which he's most famous for. He was an alternative medicine doctor, practitioner, and he treated his patients using vibration and frequency with something he called his Hato machine, and Hato means a vibration in Japanese. And he would use water in that treatment. He would both use the Hato machine and the water to diagnose and treat by aligning the frequency and using water as the vehicle for that. And he treated thousands of patients with success with doing that. And then he became interested in studying the effects of water. And that's when he got into looking at the effect of emotion on water, because he started to recognize there's frequency and vibration, and he started to recognize a correlation between his patients' thoughts, feelings, and their health, and that whole connection with the frequency and vibration. I'm just going to show a few slides here. Some of these, more about him here. So for over 20 years, he studied the scientific evidence of how the molecular structure in water transforms when it's exposed to human words, thoughts, sounds, and intentions. So he had a couple of books that he explored this in. One of them is The Hidden Messages in Water, became a New York Times bestseller. And after studying for all those years, he did pass away in 2014. But understanding the idea of water and how powerful and how it's part of us and part of the world, and how it can reflect emotions and hence vibrational alignments. He saw water as a way to spread peace and love and understanding between different peoples, that if we could enhance or bring that higher frequency into the water in our bodies and around the earth, that it could share that somehow energy out into the world as a vehicle and a messenger. So he traveled the world talking and sharing this message. And he had an assistant, Michiko Hayashi, who worked with him for the last 10 years. And after his death, she's carrying on his work as the global director of the Emoto Peace Project. And I actually had interviewed her, I think it was in 2019, on my YouTube show. So in the links and references, I can share that with you if anyone's interested. She's a really nice person and very dedicated to carrying on his mission. So I have a few slides. Some of them overlap and show some of the same images. But what he did was, for his experiments, he either said he or his people doing it with him would say words to water. So he would take one source of water, look at the crystal beforehand. So he would freeze it, look under the microscope at the crystal that's formed in the ice of the water. So, he would have a baseline for what did the water crystal look like in the first place, right? And then he would take that same water and put, in different glasses, pour out the water. So one glass he might say thank you to, or even just tape the word thank you on it. Say another glass he might put you fool, or say the word you fool. And this was in Japanese, so it probably sounded more appropriate than you fool. Okay. Or another one, I love you, or so over years he did all these experiments with water, and the evidence of after treating water to the level of energy of the frequency of thank you, or the word wisdom, right? It created these different kinds of crystals showing the effect of the words, thoughts, and intentions. So here we have thank you, wisdom, truth, eternal, angel, I love you, peace, you fool, my bar is in the way, but I think that's you make me sick, evil, polluted water, and before being prayed for, and polluted water after being prayed for. And here are some more of water being exposed to different kinds of music. So up there in the corner is heavy metal, say Amazing Grace. I'll just kind of hop around. Imagine by John Lennon. And you can see the titles there and the music that they were exposed to, and just the different forms of crystals that are expressed through that frequency or vibration of the kind of music. I thought it was interesting that Heartbreak Hotel by Elvis Presley it's almost like a broken heart. It's partially formed and partially unformed, partially starting to look good and partially not looking so great. So I thought that was interesting. Dr. Emoto's experiments exhibited the empathic qualities of water, and it's something we generally don't attribute to a non-human or animal, right? And of course, empathy infers emotion. So maybe the better word might be responsive or reflective of the energies around it. So just like the elementals may do the same, they being neutral, they can enhance the energies that are directed or called in. So but with water, we have an opportunity to see a physical representation of this response of the effect of thoughts, emotions, and intentions. So yeah, he also did, and others have done, other experiments with words and intentions, music, and they've done it with plants or food. For example, experiments with rice, Dr. Emoto did, putting rice in water. And for example, they found that if they gave loving words to, say, 3 samples, for example, if they had loving words to one sample, after about a month, the wet rice in that cup began to ferment, but with a pleasant scent. It was like a good fermentation, right? Now, the hateful words, the rice began to turn black, and the third one they ignored completely. They didn't say nice things, they didn't say bad things, they just ignored it. And it was the one that spoiled the worst, that had the worst outcome. And this is something that's been noted in human psychology, that infants who were ignored exhibited the most psychological difficulties. And so with water being 70% of our bodies, it's what if water is the messenger? What if water is the empath that creates this, movement, because it's in all of us. It's in our brains, our hearts, our, in our blood. So what if water is the secret messenger, and how we affect water affects us? So imagine what could happen if all of the interface with water could be charged with positivity. Here are some more examples of different crystals. And again, some of these are repeats. The Fujiwara water from the problem they had in Japan there, before prayer and after prayer. And of course, we think of holy water, and praying over food, or praying over food and water before we drink it, is a tradition, and there's a reason behind it. Okay, now here's just a screenshot from something that I can't really explain, but I wanted to include this. This is from 2018, so it's fairly recent, and therefore it's not out in, I want to say, normal jargon yet. So what I got from trying to understand this, not being a scientist, is they're talking about water memory due to chains of nanopearls. And the molecular structure of water, as you can see from those frozen crystals, water is H2O, right? Water's water. But the way that the particular molecules decide to line up changes depending on, as we've seen, the energy, the temperature, all sorts of things. So they were suggesting the way that water holds memory is that it creates like the molecules create like a little circle holding hands. And within that circle of molecules, memory or information can be stored and then transferred. So this is what the chains of nanopearls are. It's talking about these circles holding hands and saving information inside of that. And once again, it talks about the dipoles are aligned but can be set in oscillation at the frequency of vibration of the charged part of active molecules. And further, this goes on to say, they are then automatically trimmed to become information carriers. So a part of the information, not the whole information, but just a part of it, can be a carrier of the whole of the information. So what they're finding is just like, they can say with a piece of the DNA that all of the DNA can be reproduced. Just if you had a cup full of water and the cup full of water was all the information, you could take one little drop of that water and it has all the information that you need to recreate the cup of water. So this is my attempt at trying to translate what's going on in modern science about water. So two other people that have made a big leap in the area of water. We have the title here, Water is Both the Signal and the Matter, moving into quantum physics, biology and physics meet. Dr. Jacques Benveniste was a researcher in the 70s and 80s into water. He was a well-known scientist. He had published in most of the journals, and then he became interested in studying water and the power of water, the memory of water, similar to what Dr. Emoto did. And what happened to him was it wasn't in the narrative. It wasn't in the mainstream. So he began to get ridiculed and blackballed. Now, and I don't know if he killed himself or if he died young and early for some reason. I did not go into that, but apparently he died before his time. Luckily, though, Dr. Luc Montagnier, who was the Nobel Prize winner for discovering the virus HIV, had taken an interest in his work and had at first been, thinking, I don't know, that's kind of weird. But when he did a few things with Dr. Benveniste and, saw that there was validity behind it. So he chose to carry on the work. And he's done investigations in water memory using frequency wave and also finding evidence for the basis of homeopathy, which is based on one small part of something carrying that fuller memory. Like we were talking about, one bit of the information being able to carry the whole of the information. And then it gets into, pardon the pun, water, right? But it gets into wave frequencies versus matter. So the quantum physics, is it solid or is it a wave? And so this kind of starts going into that area, that wave frequencies are carried within our cells. And is that water? And once again, beyond that, that would have been a whole, I don't know, degree I'd have to take to be able to explain that any further. But perhaps some of you, maybe it'll light a little brain cell like it did for me, and it'll come to you in your sleep. So further on, water-based computers are something that is being looked at now and probably being looked at for a while. So for water-based computers, the researchers need to create two states of water. And again, we're talking about the wave and matter. And they do this using special super hydrophobic surfaces. So something super slippery that will carry the water easily, carry that information and allow whatever they need to happen. But I just thought I'd have to throw in this lotus leaf. Lotus leaves are the quintessential super hydrophobic surface, repelling water so effectively that droplets cleanly roll off a leaf even when muddy. And that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the water-based computers, but I just thought it was interesting because the lotus is that representation of so much, and that it has this natural quality. And who knows, maybe there's something further to that. Oh, sorry, going back to the water computers. So let me see if I had these other more notes on that. The structure of water. Sorry, I thought I had further notes, but the structure of water, again, like it can change its structure. So with these water-based computers, they're taking, just like the smallest droplet of water, and because it has this tensile strength too, they have the structure of water that will encapsulate. It can encapsulate and create almost like a sealed package. So one of the things that they're doing, and once again, it's a little beyond my area here, but they can take information from the water that they have this stored information in, and they can make it digital, ones and twos, create that information into a computer. They can then take that digital information and transfer it someplace via the computer, and the receiver can open that file and feed that information into water at their end and recreate the same molecular structure. So the information from water can be digitized and then transferred. And the way it was explained is something to the effect that when we say have, headphones on, that our mind doesn't know necessarily the difference from hearing live music or hearing it through headphones. So this information is transferred similarly, that it's as if it's there. It's as if it's right there, and it's not degraded. So that was one of the things that they said, even with some experiments of diluting a substance and or information in water, that they could dilute it so much that when they actually measured the water, they could not find the information, the substance that was put in it anymore, but they could recreate it completely to the undiluted state. So, and there are also these other experiments where something was affected, a sealed, vacuum sealed, water was affected by something near it. I did not pull that up, but that's an experiment that was discovered accidentally by someone, that there was poison outside of the sealed water, but somehow the sealed water picked up that information without any physical contact. So it was an energetic exchange that the water picked up. Okay, now another important person in the world of water was Victor Schauberger, and he was Austrian. That's I'm going to throw that out there for Susanna, and quite an interesting person. Let me just flip onto his page. He was an Austrian naturalist, and at a young age, he preferred to learn and spend his time in nature rather than to attend traditional university. He was a contemporary of Nikola Tesla, who was also ahead of his time, and a challenge to the powers that be, as I'll go back to Dr. Emoto, who also, it's very interesting. If you look up any of these people on Wikipedia, it's easy to see the bias with the terms that they use. They use things like purported, or like they will go into saying, oh, Dr. Emoto's work was, he was they use basically short of the word quack. And I notice whenever I'm looking up, any of these people, that there's a definite bias. So if you can avoid Wikipedia, or look at Wikipedia and be well, open-minded like you are, but I think there is a narrative trying to keep all this out of the mainstream. Anyway, so back to and of course we all know how Nikola Tesla ended up, right? He that should be another presentation. Anyway, so he was ahead of his time and a challenge to the powers that be. But through his acute observation, he developed highly efficient log chutes that worked with the nature of water rather than forcing it. He developed a device for the production of living water, which was water with an enhanced structure, as well as with all the necessary minerals in it. So he surmised that the structure of water can be destroyed or broken down due to its unnatural movement through straight pipes made of man-made materials. So he invented a device that recreated the natural environment of water and heal its wounds. He was also active in the field of waterway restoration, and based on his findings, several rivers in Austria in which the water had a destructive effect had recently been restored. And I'll get into that in just a minute about what he discovered. In 1930, he sent a sealed envelope to the Academy of Sciences sharing his observations on the behavior of water due to temperature and movement, and he labeled it turbulence. And the Academy kept the document secret for 50 years because he wasn't, out of a traditional university. That's was the supposed reason that he didn't deserve any attention, but they kept it sealed and out of the public for 50 years. In 1958, an investment fund lured him to the USA, and he saw his emigration as an opportunity for the development of his non-centralized and environmentally friendly energy generation by means of implosion. And when you explore his work, you'll find out more about that. So after he got to the US, he realized that his investors' intentions were not fair, and he was forced to give up all of his paperwork and prototypes in order to be able to return to Austria, where he passed away soon after he returned. And much of his work vanished after the acquisitions by the investors. So here's some images of some of his work, some of the things he discovered in observing water. Not surprisingly, it moves in a spiral in its natural form, and it also sort of creates like a double helix pattern with its form. And you'll notice that, of course, this is similar to so many other things that we see in nature. I wonder if our blood does that. That'd be interesting. Going through our veins, I bet it does. So one of the things that, for practical uses, that he discovered that the natural flow of a river is a vortex, as those previous images talked about, that it meanders, it doesn't flow, it winds, it rotates, it swirls. And its behavior is similar, like to tornadic activity or DNA. And there's excellent examples of these patterns that we all share. He observed and respected the nature of water, and his approach was collaborative with nature and water, leading to the success and a good outcome for both the water and the goals of those using the water and trying to get water from one place to another. Something else that he discovered, and maybe it's on the next page, is that the egg shape and in his, not so much in the flow, but in analyzing how it flows, it comes up with a egg-shaped sort of ellipse that was important in some of this information that was also explored by Kepler in his day, considering the rotation of the planets. So another sort of correlation there. So here you see the water, how it would naturally flow through a river, getting larger at the turns and kind of narrowing. So in Austria, what he discovered was watching the water, and they would have the banks, and the water banks were eroding. And as he watched it, he realized by simply placing the rocks and stones through the water to allow it to flow naturally, stopped erosion and enhanced the flow and freshness of the water. And where fish were not thriving anymore, the fish began to thrive again. The water flowed cleaner, and there was no more erosion. Now, among his, does this look like familiar? So among his drawings and things that he was working on creating was anti-gravity. And so he had drawings, and he actually made a prototype of this, parts of which have been found, but there are parts missing that people know are missing from the drawings, and they don't. So they've tried to recreate this. They did not get any lift. They did not have all the parts, and they're really not sure what missing parts there are. So this is still ongoing investigation and information on what he did. And again, natural flow versus man-made force. So in our modern world, we have forced nature to accommodate man. Water's pumped through 90-degree angles, breaking down its intrinsic nature, and it flows through buildings, under cities, gaining exposure to every frequency it encounters. And then it comes into our homes unhealed. So if you accept that water is affected by its environment, by the energy, thoughts, feelings, and picture it's just flowing past, through, under buildings, under cities, and the zeitgeist of a town or an area can be absorbed by water, like as an empath, and carried where it's going. So water does need healing. especially say before we want to drink it. One of the things that you can think about. A quote by Victor Schauberger is, "The majority believes that everything hard to comprehend must be very profound. This is incorrect. What is hard to understand is what is immature, unclear, and often false. The highest wisdom is simple and passes through the brain directly into the heart." And I thought that was a very good quote for theosophists. We spend a lot of time studying and understanding and dissecting, but we usually come back to the way to real quote unquote knowledge. It is, through the heart, through more of a unspoken understanding. Okay, here's something that I said I was going to try to get back to earlier. And this was a last minute ad that Michiko had mentioned, Dr. Pollack, who also is a current investigator into water. And so he's the one who has saying that he believes there is a fourth phase that occurs with water. And the formal name for this fourth phase is exclusion zone water, called easy water. And these findings have profound implications for chemistry, physics, and biology. So he has here his website there. I just clicked and copied here just to kind of introduce this for anyone who wants to look at more. He has a book, Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life, builds on the central role of water for biology. It provides evidence that much of the water in the cell is very near to one or another hydrophilic surface and therefore ordered, and that cell behavior can be properly understood only if this feature is properly taken into account. This goes back to that idea about the chains creating a little pod of information and how it can share information. So this is another tie-in to all of that. And his more recent book is The Fourth Phase of Water, which expands on the theme of ordered water, carrying information. Anyway, so in caps down here, I have the book goes on to show that seemingly complex behaviors of the cell can be understood in simple terms once a proper understanding of water and surfaces is achieved. So what can we do as we recognize the consciousness of water, whether it's simply like an elemental or there are elementals in it, or maybe it's something more. Maybe it has independent thinking of some sort, the consciousness that we talk about. But we can use our awareness to ameliorate the state of our water. Through thought, intention, prayer, gratitude, we can affect everything around us, including our water, and most importantly, the water, because it is the largest part of us. So on an individual basis, we can express gratitude whenever we drink, bathe, wash our belongings. Anytime we're around water, we can even just simply say thank you. Dr. Emoto's work has exhibited how our thoughts and words make a difference in the water. So before you drink or use water, consider how your thoughts are affecting it. And as you enhance your water with the positive thoughts and you bring that into your body, that can affect your cells. So even as you shower or bathe, your positive thoughts and appreciation may just spread as that water travels under the building and the city that you live in. And Victor Schauberger's work showed us that allowing water to express itself naturally respects its integrity and it sustains its vitality. So I've heard people suggest that simply stirring your water or beverage briefly to form the vortex of water in your glass can help restore its vitality. And of course, I can't see that last sentence because it's hidden from me, but recognize and appreciate, I believe it says, the power of water and our power over interacting with it. Okay, I have a page of resources and links here, and I can share that with the recording. And I think there's lots more information. So, and that is the end of that. And I'm back.
Okay, Desiree.
So,
Thank you very, very, very much. We have about 20 minutes, almost 20 minutes for
plenty of time for any.
questions and comments.
Thank you,
Who
Gwendolyn.
wants to go first?
I got Sue. Did you have your hand up? Oh, Greg does. And
Jerome.
And JD.
Jerome also.
And then Barbara Reef was the one who first unmuted, just that you know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so you want to start with Barbara?
When we know that a planet can sustain life, the first thing they look for is the presence of water.
That's right.
Okay. And they have proven that there is water on Mars.
Mhm.
And they are eventually looking to not necessarily colonize, but to put people on Mars to mine for the minerals to bring back to Earth. And in order to have people work on the mining aspect, there has to be the presence of water.
Yeah, and a lot of people believe that there, was life on Mars a long, long, long time ago, which is not unlikely, and maybe it's coming back around. So it's interesting.
Okay, Jerome.
Yeah.
And then Elmar.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to thank Desiree. The presentation was absolutely stellar. I did
Thank
want
you.
to mention that Emoto's experiments with the crystal water, that crystal actually formed, as I understand it, on the peak or as a single crystal on the peak of a pyramid type ice crystal. Not
Oh.
all the crystal changed that way, just the one that really found the peak. And to me, that kind of related to the bend point on an obelisk or a pyramid, the very peak on top of the capstone, which actually is where heaven and earth exchange information and sharing and powers, according to the Kemetic philosophy. But that same point then on these mammoth structures that mankind's built, also that same point where that crystal formed as the interface between matter and emotion, according to Emoto's presentation. So I just thought that was one of my observations. Just thought I'd include that in sharing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you. That's interesting. I did not know that about the peak on the ice crystal. Very interesting. Now you gave me something else to explore, right? But that would make sense. That just ties more into, the geometry and, all that stuff. And Susan Brown says, hang on, I'll just check the chat for a minute. Susan Brown says we also need to respect water. Shadows plagued with landslides because of water. Yeah. And I think that Schauberger would have had maybe something to say about, to help with that. If people respected and helped water naturally go where water needs to go, that it could be collaborative. Greg, I think, was next.
Yeah, and Elmar after that.
Yeah, I just had a thank you very much. I really enjoyed your topic. I was so interested to hear this. More of a comment. I was thinking when I first saw the topic, I was thinking of the movie, actually the book by Stanislav Lem of Solaris, when he's thinking about this, the planet, and of course, mostly the planet appears as this sort of watery thing, and the consciousness developing out of that. So it just seems to be a theme that not only is in the different types of research that people have done or have seen, but on a more philosophical level, whether or not there's consciousness at that level also seems to be pretty interesting and important.
Mhm. True, thank you. Yeah, something I didn't put in the talk is one of the things that Emoto found also is that water has different molecular personalities in different parts of the world too. So, you know, spring water from one place is different than spring water from another place. And of course, people that sell water, you know, they say that anyway, right? You have to drink our spring water. But one more thing is what's popular, and I haven't really explored it much, but again, the idea that water being, you know, near something can be enhanced or, you know, or messed up by it. So one of the things that's out there is bottles where you put a crystal, you know, like say, you know, like a quartz crystal or something like that into a thing inside the bottle, and you make crystal water. So you could choose the energy of the crystal, the frequency of different crystals to enhance your waters. I thought that was kind of interesting. And let's see, who was next? Elmar?
Yeah, thanks, Desiree. It's very interesting talk, and I have a few comments and questions and stuff. You know, hopefully there's enough time to do that. You talk about water and some sort of like spiritual aspect of it. Interesting enough, now there's the movie came out Dune, and it's really value the water, and I think it brings probably a lot of awareness into the culture as well, like, oh, we need to you know, take more care of the water and how we treat it. I personally, I think 15 years ago, I don't know, I had this intuition or something. I don't like to drink out of plastic bottles anymore, you know.
Mhm.
And I'm getting ridiculous, like, you know, this scientists and stuff. You know, I had some sort of similar things, and I get a lot of ridicule and stuff because I don't like to drink out of metal, aluminium and stuff, and it's just glass. You know, I just want glass. And whenever I carry my glass bottle around, people's like, yeah, you know, whatever, you know. And also, but you know, I just like makes a huge difference to me. You know, I don't know if there's anything behind it. And the other thing is when I go to a restaurant, and it doesn't matter how fancy and good it is, and they give me a glass of water and I don't like it, it's like, well, I'm never coming back here. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like I charge it by the water they give me, you know, and how it tastes, you know. So some think like, you know, and I feel like, well, that you're doing all this fancy stuff, you know, food and everything, and they can't even like think of providing quality water. That you know, so I think like, well, something not right anyway.
Mhm.
And my question was about, you know, filtering water versus, you know, like you talked a lot about the energy of what we, you know, how can we place it to some degree, and but then, you know, what's the ratios, like we should really kind of like thinking of how pure and where it comes from, or what it, you know, what it went through the stages, and then where's the ratio to a thing, like in one way it's like, well, out of bad water can a blessed good or something, you know, like I don't, where's the ratio there of
Yeah,
how to take care of it and how to do, and
I
do
know
you know
what you
of any
mean.
good filters which have some yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, so there's on the one hand, there's the filters are not so much about the molecular structure of water. They're taking out, you know, pollutants and metals and whatever might be in the water. But getting back to Schauberger, he created water purification, I think I mentioned, that does some sort of swirly thing, like it swirls it through one way, then it swirls it through the other. And it was, and some people have built these I think it's on one of these documentaries, but they've gone into, you know, say towns in Mexico and done this, and it's easy to make, and it's inexpensive and purifies the water. in small towns. They've done several of these. So I thought that was interesting. Also, there's a water therapy that they use on people where you can go get like this water massage, and the water shoots do this water, they recreate the natural spiral of the water, which would supposedly heal the water and make it healing waters. So I thought that was interesting as well. So answer to your question is, I don't know, how much faith I would have in trusting that I blessed the, tainted water, but it certainly can't hurt. It would be really interesting. I'm sure if I were to dig that I might find where they tested, the pollution. They showed the crystals of the polluted water, crystal changing to a beautiful crystal with prayer. I don't know that any studies were done to actually measure the pollutant, and they probably have done. And I didn't see that when I was looking things up.
Yeah, I think what I really was interested, I think maybe to clarify, how we have some sort of hierarchy of importance, and if I don't take care of like sort of lower things, like when you start with the crystal on a really dirty water, it's like, well, but if I have take some impurities out, and what is like the levels of lower things you have to take care of first to go to the higher ones to maybe energize it. So that's, I guess, was my question. Yeah.
Thanks, Elmar.
But that's interesting, this swirly things. So do you remember where they had this swirly, which resources you found that, the swirly filtering systems?
I think you could. I did not look it up. I just saw it mentioned, in one of the documentaries that I looked at. They were showing that they do that. So you could probably go on Amazon and say water, purification shower head or something, or I'm sure they sell them for your faucets too, but it kind of just makes that swirl on the way out. And that's why I said, even some people just say, if you just stir your water to recreate that, somehow the structure responds. So I'm like, hey, I'll do it all. I got my rose petals, my crystals, stir my water, pray. I figured none of that hurts anything, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you said that about the swirling. I always thought the swirling is more about oxygizing it or something, but now I'll learn from you that it's more about the
that
structure.
might be part of it. That might be part of what happens to help the structure.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Who else had hands up? Do you see them, Veronica? You do.
Yeah. Well, it's not a question. It's a comment. Yesterday, I was looking at a Institute of Noetic Sciences webinar, and this I think is Canadian. Well, that's irrelevant. There was a PhD candidate who is also making or cooperating in making discoveries, and it has to do with the computer aspect of your slide. And they're working on developing, and they already have it, not for the public though, wearable technologies. Whereas if someone needs an EEG or an MRI or something similar, which are very involved and costly, there is a technology that you basically put on like a headband, and they are using the molecules coming out of the natural elements to create those technologies.
Interesting.
So the research is already advanced, and they have the wearables, but they're not yet accessible to the public, and probably won't be for several years. But they are testable, and they will simplify. But it's interesting because then these molecules are already in the body, and they will be sort of reestablished for people with high level of anxiety, depression, psychosis, and such things.
Yeah, and there's something else I was going to share. Just as an interesting side note, I gotta find it here though. I know we're about running out of time, but I will pull it up here and see if I Okay, so this was something else that I thought was really kind of interesting, especially leaning, okay, a bit tying into some of the conspiracy theories about, population, not population, but controlling the population or mind control or that. And so while I was researching, I thought this was a very interesting thing from an article in 2015 about using water in computing. And here's the quote out of it. Each droplet is infused with magnetic nanoparticles that make the water responsive to an applied magnetic field. So by flipping the polarity of these bars, the team can decide which path each droplet will take through the bar maze. The system only works as a general purpose computer because it is synchronous, meaning that it keeps the various operations marching to the same beat. The researchers say they could potentially control millions of droplets at once with a scaled version of the same technology. In a conventional computer, each of these beats is called a clock cycle. In a water drop computer, this beat is controlled by the flipping magnetic field. In both cases, the central timing mechanism makes sure that even thousands of different paths and interactions all proceed according to the same schedule and can thus work together toward computational goals. Then it goes into this UNIVAC's liquid-based memory. Some of the very earliest computers, like the UNIVAC 1, had computer memory based on this. Gets almost done. Computer memory based on liquid mercury. In essence, the idea of representing computer data with physical matter is not new. What is new is the idea that the physical structure of the chip could be used to direct the movement of matter in a robust, pre-programmed way. In a best case scenario, this sort of paradigm shift in the approach to experimental chemistry could cause a sort of exponential efficiency increase electronic computers allowed in regular mathematics. Now, one big push in the next quest is next generation medicine called the so-called organ on a chip technology, which would allow scientists to test the effects of drugs and other substances on certain organs by running those substances through the small stand-in whole organ. So they're talking about, once again, small piece of information representing the whole organ, with the ability to quickly and systematically test the interactions of thousands of different substances that might someday be plausible to the point of the individual on a chip. Anyway, so that was 2015. Sorry, that was a bit long, but we're talking about the nanoparticles and how it can be affected by electromagnetism and us being water and all that. It made me go, some of the ideas about if somebody changes the electromagnetic field, how does that affect me if I have nanoparticles, right? So sorry for that long thing.
Yeah, I think we can read at least a couple of the comments, like people. So Gwendolyn Reese, Sandra Ingerman, who is one of the big shamanic practitioner healers, did a bunch of experiments on water. I was trained by one of her top students, and she's giving a link if you're interested.
Thank you.
And then Terry says, Emoto cleaned polluted lakes and health issues of patients with positive water therapy. And Seth just had to leave. Okay.
Okay, and was there
any more
else
questions? Alex, I see Alex raised
Alex.
his hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to like two small comments. One is the Wikipedia page for Schauberger in German is much better and less biased. But those who don't read German, of course, Google Translate can help make sense because it's really some interesting facts there. It's really good. Of course, it's not for Elmar. Elmar can read, like German.
And Susanna.
And Susanna.
And Rosie.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Who else can read German, right?
And the second thing is in the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church, there was always this belief that the holy water can keep these qualities, the good qualities and drinkable qualities for a longer time than normal water.
Yeah.
It's not always the case because I did some experiments also, like in tests. But the thing is, of course, if you just do a ritual without praying, without really putting your mind and heart into it, it's just words. It doesn't change almost anything. But
Right.
for those when it's a real prayer and we like merge our own energy with the energy of the water, then it changes something. And it's like an old belief. That's why it's great that some kind of scientific proof and and people study that, which is great.
Yeah,
Isn't
it's
it?
an alchemical process, really. Yeah.
So
Thank you
the-
for saying that, Alex. Yeah.
And then, you know, you also make me think of like these healing places where people go to Lourdes or you know, yeah, something special about the water and, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And it's some, you know, like I also had this experience when some water from a holy place stayed like for almost 2 years and the quality was just perfect.
Yeah.
But from another place in 2 weeks, it just
Mhm.
got bad. And
Yeah. Well, look at the Ganges. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good people. I think that some of you want to have lunch or dinner or a coffee break or a biological break. I don't know. So we could stop the recording and then we will see you